a North American audience. So that's why it was so interesting to present kind of the Australasian findings and what things are done in the Southern Hemisphere. But in his wisdom, thought there's also benefit in presenting this to practitioners based in the Southern Hemisphere as well. So we have had to move things around slightly from the original presentation, but hopefully you'll come away today with some new ideas or some new applications for different treatments and some things that you could potentially inject into your own projects or at least investigate further. So as alluded to, we will be going through top 10 safe system solutions being used in Australasia. And for those still coming through the door, I haven't done a formal introduction yet, but I might do that now. So my name is Max McArdle. I am active transport lead at Safe Systems Solutions, and I've also got my own company called Stredic, where I'm the director. So in case you ever see why I've got kind of two branding or why I've got two different jackets that I wear, those are just two organizations that I work with. Ken Beer is, of course, the principal engineer at Safe Systems Solutions. They're a dedicated road safety consultancy based across Australia and New Zealand. So very, very heavily involved in training, getting people upskilled in the road safety field, as well as doing design, strategy, policy, everything to do with the traffic and transport network. Before formally kicking off, I would like to acknowledge the First Nations people and traditional custodians. We have a collection of 500 registrations for today's webinar. So we have got people calling in from all over Australia, New Zealand, and further abroad. I'm currently based on Bunurong country, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land that I'm on and pay respect to First Nations people. I acknowledge their commitment to the land, to the water, to the air that they've looked after and preserved for millennia, and I pay my respect and continue to respect that commitment to their land. Okay. We've managed to get a good bulk of people through the door, so I will commence today's webinar. If you've got any questions or you want to share any of your own projects or examples or any of your own studies and literature, you are more than welcome to pop things in the webinar chat. I'm going to do my best to try and monitor the chat, but there's a good chance I will miss questions. So I apologize in advance if I don't get to any of your questions in today's session. However, I do have Sam from Safe System Solutions who's working in the background, and we'll make sure that anything that I'm unable to get to will get actioned and resolved, and you'll get a communication there. So please make sure you're able to say good day in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from and any kind of questions that you may have as we go through this. In developing these top 10, there was no formal kind of framework or prioritization that was done. Ken and I just agreed on some interesting treatments and selected ones that we believe are showing significant promise in reducing fatal and serious crash outcomes and align with safe system principles. So don't get too hung up on the numbers and why that's number 7, why that's number 8. That's not a pertinent aspect of this conversation today. But our first example is rural cross intersections. And how many of these have we got across our jurisdictions? Just gun barrel straight roads intersecting with each other with some type of priority control. Could be a give way, it could be a stop, it could be nothing actually. You might not even have any signage there, but odds are there's going to be a give way sign there. Generally in rural environments, the default speed of 100 kilometers per hour would apply. Otherwise, you might have an actual 100 kilometer per hour speed zone in force or 80, 90, relatively high speeds. The thing with these rural intersections is the way that they are perceived is they can easily be missed or misconstrued. And a perfect example is this is a snapshot of approaching a rural intersection in that kind of cross configuration. When you've got the sunlight and sun glare as a factor, you've got line marking that could be at first perceived as just a barrier line, one continuous barrier line, which gives the illusion that there isn't actually an intersection. This is just a through road. There's other things that can add to that visual deceit, such as if you've got, a row of trees on either side or a row of power poles or utility poles, and they're continuing through the intersection. All of these factors are portraying to the driver that this is a through road, not an intersection. And generally, the way that we equip our intersections that look like this is we put a nice little 40 centimeter sign that says give way. And we might put some line marking down to help communicate that as well. But time and time again, we see this overshoot style of crash where you've got this see-through effect occurring and vehicles will just drive straight through that intersection, resulting in collisions with vehicles on the thoroughfare there. This is the general kind of pattern that we will run this session is I'll explain a risk and then I'll go through a solution. One way that we have seen a promising treatment that is demonstrating safety benefits and it's relatively low cost is transverse rumble strips. So the idea behind this is you can apply them in sets or as individual, and these are profiled pavement markings that will give a motorist a haptic warning. And what I mean by haptic is it's something that you can feel in your steering wheel. There's some type of vibration. There's an audio cue to it as well because you will pick up on a noise difference from the surrounding pavement. There's also a visual element associated with transverse rumble strips as well. I'm actually coincidentally working on a project with Safe System Solutions NZ on this exact topic for Austroads who are interested in improving their guidance around transverse rumble strips and making a little bit more coherent and cohesive across jurisdictions because there are a variety of transverse rumble strips applied depending on which part of the country or which country you are from. So transverse rumble strips are a really good way of just waking up drivers to the fact that something's changing up ahead. You make sure that you've got all the signage in place to alert drivers to what that change is or what that hazard is, in this instance, an intersection. And we've seen some really good examples of this, reducing the risk there of intersection type crashes. If you've ever driven in North America, you may have seen this type of treatment being milled into the pavement. So rather than build a transverse marking that sits proud, that has a profile higher than the adjacent pavement, it's probably more common in North America to actually mill into the pavement itself. As far as I'm aware, I have not seen this applied in Australasia. One of the main disbenefits is you do get debris and water ingress that can pool in those little milled sections. So that tends to be a reason that we would not recommend that as a way of applying the transverse rumble strips. However, where this could be useful is environments where you've got snow. So North America, northern states particularly, snow inundations. if you've got to plow through anything that's got, a lip to it, there is a risk of your transverse rumble strips just being plowed off. If you've milled into the pavement, that's a way that you can mitigate that risk. So that's just a bit of fun fact about why they might look different depending on your weather patterns and where you are in the world. Number 9. I'm still in intersections here, and I'm going to just show a short video from the perspective of a truck cabin. And as we are approaching an intersection, a minor leg, we can see a crash where we've failed to yield, or the vehicle on the minor leg there has failed to select an appropriate gap in traffic. One way that this can be mitigated is through the use of speed reduction. Historically, we have applied this as a permanent solution, as in always at a particular intersection, there will be this speed reduction. But with technological advancements, we don't necessarily need to see the speed reduction 24/7. The speed reduction can be enforced or in place when that risk is present. And a perfect example is the application of side road activated speeds. Now, there are multiple names for this treatment as well. This one seems to be the more common one, but there are other examples. The general principle behind this one is, as you've got a vehicle that is waiting on the minor leg, you've got electronic speed signs that light up and reduce speeds. We know if we're reducing speeds, we're going to make gap selection easier. We're going to reduce the risk of crashes occurring because the vehicle on the main thoroughfare has got more time to react and to stop if there is someone coming out. So the benefits associated with side road activated speeds are quite exciting. Indicatively, a crash reduction factor of 40% for vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, but there's a little bit of further evaluation to add a bit more rigor behind that figure. We've also seen examples in other jurisdictions where, rather than supplying a regulatory speed zone associated with the side road, providing a warning. So this is saying, hey, slow down to 50 because there is someone on the side road aiming to enter the intersection. I'll let you maybe have a discussion or a ponder around which would be more effective, but it's just another approach to manage side road activated speeds. Okie dokie, we're up to number 8. 8 in our list is got to do with cycling infrastructure, specifically bicycle lanes at the periphery of roundabouts. This was historically the way to treat bike riders at roundabouts. For many, many years, this was in Austroads guidance as the preferred way to manage cycling movements as they approach, enter, and go through a roundabout. However, this is no longer the case. We no longer recommend this based on the safety disbenefits associated with bike riders riding in the periphery. And see, Ken's very confused about this. Ken is actually an avid cyclist. He used to be much more engaged in kind of competitions and things like that. He's more into the marathon running now, but certainly still gets out on 2 wheels frequently. The reason that we have moved away from this as a design recommendation is multifaceted, but to explain a few things, the exit legs of these designs typically would not feature a cycle lane. So there's this gap or absence of connectivity. Also, forcing riders to use the periphery of a roundabout is just making them less visible. It's harder for vehicles that are approaching the roundabout to see a bike rider, period. It takes a lot more cognitive effort to actually stop your vehicle, look for a bike rider. You're always looking for cars. Like your brain is focused on the big metal cage. That's what your eyes are looking for and what you're scanning for. It takes more cognitive effort to look for a bike rider. And the further that you push them away from, that central area where you would be expecting vehicles, the less likely it is that vehicles are going to see the bike rider at all. I've got a video that kind of demonstrates that kind of look but fail to see approach or phenomena. You're welcome to do some Googling and get some further information on that. But here's an example of one riding in the periphery and a vehicle failing to yield, resulting in a collision. Even in the middle of roundabouts, bike riders can be at risk with that exact same effect. As I mentioned, because of the smaller size of bike riders, it just makes us less visible. Another example of look but fail to see. So how can we mitigate this one as a risk? Well, luckily, we've gone with the approach of no longer recommending bike riders claim the outside of the circulating area. Instead, we provide fully connected paths that are beyond the circulating area. What is referred to as protected roundabouts. So this is adopted from the Dutch cycling design philosophies. So we've gone internationally to review and approve these ones, and we're seeing more and more of them across Australasia. This was, I suppose, the spearhead one, or the one that originally garnered the most attention. This is in Moray Street in South Melbourne, but there's a myriad of this treatment installed since. So I'll just use this one as an example. And the design difference, I suppose you would call it, is bike riders are not really recommended or encouraged to use the circulating area. Instead, there is this dedicated path network that extends adjacent to the footpath area in an off-road style environment, and then crossing at discrete raised locations. I'll talk about that raised nature as part of this webinar later on as well. But big safety benefits for this. You're in a much, much more prevalent position. It's a lot easier for people driving to be able to see and give way to riders in this type of environment. The other significant benefit associated with this site is all of these crossing points are raised. So you're slowing down vehicles. We know if we've got slower vehicles, we're going to be able to manage those conflict points and the risk of any conflict much, much better. Here's a little ride-through video going through that Moray Street protected roundabout. So as we're approaching, we are pushed into this off-road style environment. We're crossing with priority, so bike riders don't need to yield to vehicles there, and then continuing through, finishing our journey, not having to enter the circulating area of roundabouts. Number 7, I'm back to intersections now. This one could be an urban or it could be rural. We'll have a look at what's going on here. I've got a left-turning vehicle in a dedicated left turn lane. And once again, a near miss in this example of someone unable to see me on the thoroughfare. This is referred to as dynamic visual obstruction or masking. And the idea behind this is the dynamic nature of this is there's not like a billboard or something that is static. It's always going to be there and it's going to block sight lines. that left turn lane, at certain times of the day, there will be a car or a truck that is going to block sight lines of the oncoming traffic stream. Hence, dynamic visual obstruction. If you haven't come across that, I'll show you another example. This one is in a rural setting. And this is roughly the perspective of a driver. You can see that there is a truck headed towards the left turn lane of this minor leg. Just adjacent the truck is a white station wagon from memory. See how good my memory is. If I move forward in time, it was a station wagon. If I move forward in time, we can see that station wagon has pulled away a little bit. The truck is slowing down to perform that left turn. Now, after years and years of driving experience, your brain may signal to you, after that station wagon's gone, I'm out of here because I know that truck is turning left. They're in a dedicated left turn lane. They've got their left indicator on. There's nowhere else they're going to go. They're turning left. They're not a risk to me. A millisecond later, that Mazda had been there the whole time. We simply could not see it. It's a perfect example of like dynamic visual obstruction where you've got one moving body, something that is dynamic, blocking the sight lines. So how do we mitigate this one as a risk? Well, it is still prevalent in design, and we will continue to see this, left turn layout being designed and built and constructed. But what can we do to help mitigate this? One of the options is to move our hold line forward, to bring it forward closer to the intersection, to open up the sight lines. That can also be combined with this idea of offsetting the left turn lane. And what I mean by that is shifting the left turn lane further into the intersection, into the minor leg, so that once again, you are providing additional buffer or space between the vehicle on the exit leg and the vehicle turning left. So in this example here, we've got the vehicle on the exit leg with clearer sight lines because of this offset or this channelized area that has been provided. Here's an example of before and after a project that Safe System Solutions worked on that kind of recommended this treatment. So you can see where the previous hold line and things like that were, and how the channelized offset turn lane has managed to open the sight lines up there. Number 6. Okay, I'm back in an urban environment, and this one is pedestrian crossings. Now, this one is another near miss, and it's a video we'll watch together. Our zebra crossings are intrinsically reliant on motorists obeying signs, motorists obeying pavement markings. The Safe System fully acknowledges that people will make mistakes. You can make those signs flash. You can make those signs bigger. You can make those signs, do whatever they need to do, spin around or do something else very exotic. But they still will be ignored, or through other distracting competing factors of a motorist's innate human ability, they will be missed. So rather than relying on signs and lines to protect people that are crossing a road where they are awarded priority, instead, we love to just raise these crossing points. Now, I'm sure you're all on board with raised priority crossings, and you love your wombat crossings. It's something that I'm sure you've heard that term before, but if you haven't, If a zebra is raised up like this, in Australia at least, we tend to call that a wombat crossing. And you can apply them in multiple environments. So the one on the left-hand side is at a threshold or at the T of an intersection. You can apply them where there's a one-way slow point. That one's pretty exciting. You're going to get very, very low traffic speeds at a one-way slow point mixed with that raised priority crossing there. So that's a really interesting example. You can apply them at roundabouts. So at the protected roundabout example, as I was saying, one of the benefits is it is raised. You've created a raised priority crossing points. And why do I think that the raised nature is so exciting is, well, as soon as you put a hump or vertical deflection in a traffic environment, motorists pick up on that visual cue much, much more than a sign or pavement marking alone. Providing that vertical deflection really elevates, okay, I need to slow down, I need to yield. It significantly improves compliance with crossing points. And that's not opinion. Like there's multiple evaluations that have gone into that would state that if you were to compare an at-grade zebra crossing to a raised zebra crossing or a wombat crossing, the compliance with the latter is significantly improved. So raising these crossing points is a real big safe system win. You can, of course, also combine them with other supporting treatments like flashing lights, advanced warning signs. Some jurisdictions go for zigzag line marking on approach. They're very, very common in the UK. In fact, I think it's the standard in the UK. Not as common here, but we do certainly have examples of that applied. The one thing that I will say about raised crossings is the cost or the expenditure associated with them is obviously higher than if you were to do just signs and pavement marking alone. So what could be done instead? Well, Safe System Solutions recently did some work with City of Greater Geelong on this topic and explored this concept of using a low-cost traffic calming treatment, speed cushions, to manage speeds prior to the conflict point. So this is not an example of a raised crossing point because you can see this is at road level. However, vehicle speeds have been managed through cushions. I'm not trying to suggest that this would be a better or safer outcome, but in areas where you've got constraints or expenditure or there's drainage or DDA requirements, things like that, that you're just struggling to fit in a wombat crossing, reducing speeds via cushions and awarding priority in something that looks like this as a general configuration may offer improved safety benefits than not applying anything or applying just a zebra crossing. So that's something that you could consider as part of your projects. In our little exercise or our project for this as well, we decided, well, we're not 100% sure if this has actually been named. And for anyone in the road safety realm, you'll know that traffic engineers love to name things after animals. Birds are popular, but we thought we would continue that kind of process or continue that kind of structure. And if a raised pedestrian crossing is called a wombat crossing, this is kind of like the young or the juvenile or the light version of that. And if you Google what a baby wombat is called, it is called a joey. So we've kind of coined the phrase that these are called joey crossings. More than welcome to offer any advice on what you think about that name, or if you've got a different name, or if you've actually seen these applied and you've called them something else. We're all for it, but we've gone with the name Joey just to to help continue solidify how important animals are in naming these treatments. Number 5. We're doing pretty good for time. Halfway through and halfway through the treatments as well. This one is a bicycle intervention as well. And I will just do a quick disclaimer. This does involve a door-in collision and quite a significant near miss. So if that is going to be traumatic for you to view, I'd recommend just looking away for the next minute or so. But I will click play here, and we've got a vehicle that is struck by a door and nearly resulting in something quite horrific. The bicycle rider in this instance was clearly okay and able to get up, but you can see how quickly that could have been something much, much worse. Coincidentally, I was riding with Ken a few years ago, and for those that don't know, I sometimes ride with the 360 camera on my helmet. And so this is my camera's view shooting behind me, and that is Ken riding his bike. And Ken was lucky and skilled enough to miss another dooring incident there. But this type of collision is frequent, and it comes down to the way that we have just built our road environment. Decades ago, when bicycles were becoming a more common and prevalent form of transport, traffic engineers had to work out, well, we've already got this built environment. Where can we put bike riders? And historically, there was always this buffer put against a door, put against the parking lane, because that's where the door is going to open. You want to give people a little bit of space there so they're not directly in a traffic lane. Unfortunately, there was a decision like, okay, well, it's not always going to be a door opening there. You know, we can put bike lanes there because that's going to be safe enough. Not really played out too well in the favor of cycling safety or indeed appetite to get on a bike, because you'll find that a lot of people do not feel comfortable riding in bike lanes that look exactly like that, despite the fact that they are bicycle lanes. So what can we do to improve the safety? Of course, we've all seen them. The idea of protected bicycle lanes. And this is reconfiguring the way that our carriageway looks. No longer do we have a bicycle facility that is adjacent to the traffic stream and the parking lane. We swap those facilities. So you've got cycling closer to the footpath and a parking lane closer to the live traffic lane. Now, there's a couple of different configurations that you could adopt. You can do unidirectional, meaning, you know, you've got one-way cycling traffic that rides in that protected space, and that is replicated on both sides of the carriageway. The other option is a bidirectional facility where you just focus all your cycling traffic, both directions, on one side of the road. There's pros and cons with both, and if you want any more information on that, I'm more than happy to discuss in detail. But in the just acknowledging time, I will make sure that we get through all of the different treatments today. Protected bicycle lanes have other kind of broader benefits, including they can be used as a trial. So there's lots of great examples of pop-up bicycle lanes or pop-up infrastructure that has been installed not just across Australasia, but looking more broadly across Europe and North America, where you'll see that, okay, we're just going to take a traffic lane and reallocate that space to people riding bikes. And that's a way that jurisdictions can test how effective these types of changes are, how the community feels about them. Most of the time, there's a strong opposition at the start of these projects, and then people move on and they're like, yeah, okay, I don't understand why we didn't have that before. It's quite remarkable how people's opinions can shift as they go through a trial like this, and hopefully one day become permanent solutions as well. Protected bicycle lanes can also improve streetscape amenity. It can make things more inviting. You've got more people using active transport to get around as opposed to just driving from A to B and getting in your vehicle and adding to congestion and all the environmental impacts associated with that. There's an opportunity for protected bike lanes to improve that urban character and to make it more inviting. There is research that would suggest even changes to the number of cars parks and removal of parking facilities and providing cycling infrastructure instead can actually be a benefit to traders. So I know we regularly hear about people concerned about losing business associated with any changes to the road and particularly parking in front of their premises. But there's plenty of research which suggests that it's likely that your profits might go up because bike riders are more likely to stop and spend time and actually buy goods and services from these businesses. And the amount of space that one vehicle can occupy versus however many bike riders could take up within that space is about 6. In terms of just the dollars per head, there's another benefit there. Happy to share more information on that, though, if you're interested. Keep going through. Number 4, we're getting to the pointy end. Ken would know all the fancy bingo number calling names for these, but I don't know any of them. So I'm just going to call them as it is. Number 4. What have we got this one? There we go. Screen froze for a second. Another intersection here. And this could be urban. This could be rural. We'll have a look at what's going on here. Another example of failing to yield, and those conflict angles are as perpendicular as you could get. So, of course, we've known about roundabouts for decades now across Australasia, and we are not shy to implement them in local streets. We're not shy to implement them in like urban mixed-use arterials, rural settings. There certainly are a real character of our transport network, but just wanted to do a shout out to how good roundabouts are at managing speeds and reducing the risk of collisions. One of the key benefits associated with roundabouts is they reduce the number of conflict points. So there's only a certain amount of ways that you can possibly collide with another person in a roundabout, as opposed to an intersection. You could be turning left and get rear-ended. You could be trying to filter through right turns and get, collided that way. It could be an example of just going straight through. There's a lot of different ways that a cross-intersection crash can occur. Roundabouts have significantly less number of conflict points. Moreover, the conflict angle is significantly improved. What we have introduced with roundabouts is horizontal deflection. So before with raised crossings, I spoke about vertical deflection. Roundabouts offer horizontal deflection. And I will caveat that with not all roundabouts, but I'll explain that a little bit later. And what we do like to see is if you've got a vehicle-to-vehicle collision, the more acute you can make that conflict point, the better safety and performance that you will see in terms of vehicle occupant risk. And the reason for that is if you're colliding like this and a T perpendicular, you go from kind of maximum velocity to 0 quite quickly. If you are colliding at an acute angle, it's more likely that you'll just glance off of each other and slowly dissipate that energy. The other reason that I suppose a 90-degree crash would generally result in more severe crash outcomes is because the side of your vehicle is just not built to be able to withstand that. And if you've got all of that energy that's going to come to a quick deceleration, that's going to result in quite significant injuries to that vehicle. Roundabouts are also really, really good at waking drivers up. If you put a hazard in the middle of a road and you actually introduce turning movements, you're going to kind of challenge the way that motorists need to think and engage with the road environment. If you've just got a dead straight road with traffic signals, you will find that there will just be instances of just going straight through red lights and those types of crashes. Roundabouts are very, very good at, they will slow down vehicles because people can see, okay, there's something about this road that's changing up ahead. I need to waken up and work out what's going on. Now, in the UK, once again, having a look globally, you may see this idea of mini roundabouts. We've got mini roundabouts across Australasia as well. Probably not as common, but it's this general idea that, you don't necessarily need a full circulating area and massive horizontal deflection coming up to the roundabout. You really just want to challenge who has got the priority. So in this example, you can see that there's no major thoroughfare or no leg that has got automatic priority. All of those vehicles need to come in there and then work out, okay, who's got the right of way, who's going in next. So just challenging that sense of I'm just going to go straight through here can also be very effective. And here's an example of a site that was a cross intersection with give way priority control that was upgraded to a urban compact roundabout. And what I mean by compact is we do not have horizontal deflection in terms of approach legs. That's still dead straight, but we do have speed cushions. So this is how we're managing speeds prior to the conflict point. And then all of this is kind of low-cost infrastructure. This is in Mildura, for those that aren't familiar with this site. Things that can be implemented quite quickly and quite cost-effective as well. New Zealand got a hold of this, and they have gone out and done their own low-cost roundabout treatment. And this is just kind of pavement marking with some wheel stops, or what those are actually called, but very, very minor infrastructure bolt down style treatments, just to once again challenge who has right of way here and not award priority at a leg. In a rural setting, another example where we do not have horizontal deflection, but we've provided vertical. It's a quick video, this one, but you'll see that there's kind of one platform here and then another platform here. So you've got gradual speed reduction for vehicles as they're approaching this roundabout. And the reason for that is it would have been too expensive to build horizontal curbs to slow down vehicles, mostly because of that Telstra facility there. So instead, vertical deflection was used. And this is referred to as a compact roundabout. Now there's a little fly through to give you a taste of what that one looks like. And I'll move on to number 3. Okay, got a quick video here. This one's a near miss, and driving at nighttime in an urban setting. And we've just got someone that's walked across the road and they've slipped over and they've apologized for doing that and, just dusted themselves off. And, it's all come together and working out well. And why is this working? Well, speeds are low enough to accept those mistakes. The person driving was at a low speed and able to stop abruptly and, acknowledge that in these urban environments where you've got shops and restaurants and bars on either side, you're going to get sporadic crossing. It's not reasonable to expect that you are just going to get 100% compliance at dedicated crossing points. We don't want to just be putting fences and corralling people like cattle because it's not human. That's not what we're going to do. So instead, we reduce speeds to within these kind of limits that would be survivable if collisions were to occur. And a perfect example of that is this fellow here. He's Olympic medalist. He's running along here and charging full speed into a pommel horse. Now, he's hurt himself. He's broken a few ribs, but that is not life-threatening. He actually, 4 years later, goes on to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So he's fine. He's okay. And that's what the body can withstand. Basically, as fast as a human can run and abruptly stop is what we're built to survive. Vehicles can travel much, much faster than that. So where we do have risk of people walking around or riding or scooting or whatever it is, conflicting with vehicles, we want to bring them down to speeds that are within that survivable tolerance. So I'm sure you've seen curves like this. I'll quickly go through this for key crash types. So for a vehicle colliding with a person walking, generally, if we accept there's a 10% fatal outcome probability, a speed of 30 kilometers per hour should be the target. For a vehicle-to-vehicle intersection or 90-degree collision, it's around 50 kilometers per hour, and head-on collisions around 70. What I'll focus on at this stage is just that 30 kilometer per hour speed target. And that is exactly why you are seeing more and more urban areas have 30 kilometer per hour speed zones, because that aligns with what we as human beings can withstand in case there is a collision. So rather than, getting into that high risk category of being something that won't be survivable, we're hopefully able to walk away from those types of collisions. I'll skip through these ones just to make sure that I get through all of the content for today, but there's multiple ways that you can map risk and kind of determine exactly which speed zones should be targeted first, and try to think of that in a strategic way. Number 2, okie dokie, nearly there. Intersections, signalized intersections. So this is something for many, many, many years, traffic signals have been seen as this is the best that we can do to manage, network efficiency and safety. And credit to traffic signals, they do a good job. They are not perfect. And it's not the best that we can do. This one is a little close to home. So I live maybe 20 minutes southeast of where this map is. But this little heat map here is just showing where fatal and serious injury crashes have occurred. And you can see the hot white or yellow marks. All of them are occurring at intersections. All of those intersections are signalized. So we cannot just accept that if we signalize the site, we've done all that we can do to manage risk. We need to be thinking about what can we do to manage speed through there. And raised safety platforms do exactly that. It is similar to the raised crossings. It's using vertical deflection to bring down vehicle speeds. This is one of Ken's favorite photos. It's a green phase for vehicles, yet you can see the brake lights are engaged. You've no longer got a vehicle or a motorist with their foot on the accelerator approaching the intersection. They've got it on the brake because they have to slow down for that raised safety platform. And what that does, it significantly reduces this dilemma zone. So if it changes to amber, you know, you're more likely to be able to come to a stop and not just go straight through because you've already got your foot on the brake there. These are getting applied more and more across Australasia and got some very, very exciting results. Austroads recently did some work on this topic, a project that I was on. So you're welcome to do a quick literature review of that work. But yeah, very, very exciting. I think there's a lot of promise with this treatment and manages the speeds at those high risk locations. Number one. Now, we've gone through a lot, and number one is one that also has been with us for many, many years and something that we've appreciated or perhaps not necessarily considered as road safety, safe system application, but it certainly warrants a lot of attention. And we'll actually explain this through a metaphor, which is instead of looking through a transport lens, we'll go through a high-rise building construction. And if you were building, a new 20-story tower and you were concerned about the safety of all of those balconies, well, the first level balcony, if someone was to fall off of that, that's the equivalent of being hit by a car at 30 kilometers per hour. The second level balcony, if someone fell off that, that's the equivalent of about 40 kilometers per hour, etc., etc. And that has actually been tested. So people have dropped cars from all those different heights and taken measurements and worked all of those, exactly what that looks like. We never see a balcony that looks like this. We never see a balcony that is unprotected. We also never see a balcony that uses line marking to say, you need to stay on that side. Do not cross this line. That would be unacceptable. We would not be very good building constructors if we were recommending that. We would quickly be sued. And anyway, regardless of what balcony you're on, you will have physical protection so that people cannot fall through and that people cannot, without kind of deliberate intent, go over that railing. Circling that back to, of course, our environment, we absolutely do accept that there will be road environments where high-speed collisions can occur with the adjacent road environment where there is no definition. Most environments, you'll at least have some type of line marking to suggest that's the edge of the line of your road, your traffic lane. Don't go beyond that. But realistically, we should be, as an industry, saying that's not acceptable. We cannot just say that paint will protect people's lives because it will not. Barrier systems can. Barrier systems do not discriminate. They don't care if you were drink driving or fatigued or whatever, distracted because you've got children in the background, arguing or whatever. Barriers don't care. They will be there to grab your energy and slowly dissipate that over a period of time and keep you safe from accessing the adjacent hazards beyond them. So road safety barriers, complete with underrun protection, that's used to protect motorbike riders so that they don't strike the poles or the posts of the barrier systems. Very, very effective solutions. We're not just limited to putting them in at the edge of carriageways. We can also use them in the center of roadways. So in this example, a very close near miss there. Using a central barrier system just completely eliminates that head-on risk altogether. We are seeing more and more of our kind of upgraded highways just adopting this as, this is what the new highway looks like. It's no longer acceptable that we're just going to put line marking or audio tactile or whatever it would be to reduce the risk of head on and reduce the risk of front off road crashes. We're just going to go barrier and barrier and provide overtaking opportunities to ensure that, you're not just going to be stuck behind a caravan for 4 hours. And that was another example of that style of treatment. So where you've got kind of overtaking opportunities, that's kind of referred to as a 2+1 intervention for those interested, as adopted from Sweden. And the idea is you've got two lanes of traffic that can overtake and then one go in the opposite direction, and then that flips so that there's always kind of that opportunity to get around slower moving vehicles and things like that. And that's the end of our top 10. So I hope that you managed to get some new ideas, some inspiration, even if you're aware of all of the treatments. Perhaps you got to see some photos from different jurisdictions or things that you haven't seen before. That's all great. Safe System Solutions do a wonderful job in sharing all of their technical news and insights. If you're not already, make sure you join the Safe System snippets. So I'll leave that QR code up there. And that's just like newsletters and LinkedIn pieces about what's going on in industry, how that is influencing the safety of our community, and what we can do as practitioners or advocates to either harness that or, maybe move away from things that have historically been accepted as the norm. Lots and lots of good information in those snippets. And of course, if you haven't already, please do connect on LinkedIn with Ken Beer, Principal Engineer, Safe System Solutions. You're welcome to give me a shout out as well. My focus is pedestrian and bicycle riders and all things micromobility. That's kind of my favorite way to get around and my favorite thing to talk about and focus on. So if any of your projects involve that, I'm more than happy to chat through any of those specifics. But I apologize, I did not get to all of those questions that I promised. That really flew by for me, but I hope that you got something out of it. If it was your lunch break, I hope you enjoyed a delicious lunch. And yeah, hope you all have a terrific day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will be in touch with any of those outstanding comments. Take care. Thank you very much.